Okay, we are spiritual beings in a physical body. Our thought creates reality, and we're all connected. This is the basic things that I usually say at the start of a video. That's because I believe that's the basics of what is important and what is the basics of us humans here on this earth. Everything else, has to come from that, because otherwise most of what you might criticise or whatever won't make any sense or won't really be that valid. So that's how I look at it. A spiritual being in a physical body, in a physical world, which we create with our thinking, and we're also connected to one another. Our thoughts go from one to the other. Our thoughts influence the next person, someone else. They get the thought, they don't recognise that it's my thought or someone else's. They recognise it as their own thought. And this is complicated by the reality that the world around them is also another reality, in the sense that it is able to control those thoughts. The thoughts that someone might send to me or I might send to someone else can be hijacked and controlled and manipulated by the actual world around. This is done by technology. So there is the natural realm, the human realm, where the human is, say, just on its own, like doesn't have any technology. And that is a spiritual being who just naturally would create reality with their thinking. And that being would be connected to other beings of a similar ability, shall we say. But all human beings have this ability, because that's what it is to be a human at its very basic level. Then we have the world around us, this technically controlled kind of matrix. I think that's fair to say, technically controlled matrix, because the matrix kind of implies technology, and technology is control, because technology is not a free-flowing type of natural thing. It is something that has been constructed, and it is operated that way. It's a mechanical thing, so anything mechanical is controlled and created that way. Now it's complicated in that sense, and I'm thinking about it as I'm going along, as you can see, so that's probably why I'm not going to sound very clear. I'm going to sound vague. The computer is similar to the human thinking, in the sense that, well, it is the human thinking, really. It's the human thinking hijacked by the computer and then relayed back to us. In other words, it's human input, a lot of human input, the same way that I was saying we are all connected. So it's a duplicate, fake human mind operation. It's a technically inferior, in my opinion, duplicate of what the human being is and is supposed to be doing, but is not, because we have been hijacked via the internet, via the technology. That is replacing what we're supposed to be doing naturally, fluently, without effort. But, we don't know this, and we can't operate it properly because of this. So it's a big dilemma and problem in that sense. Because if we were operating naturally, our thought creating reality and all connected, that would be very instantaneous, much quicker than an internet, and much more genuine and more natural, because you're not just getting thought, you're getting the feelings and the emotions, because that also is part of the human being. And because frequency, vibration and energy make up the so-called universe, and I didn't make that up, that's what science says, and so I'm taking that and saying, well, that's right, we are then the frequency, vibration and energy too, and our thought creates reality, so therefore our frequency also, our vibration, our level of emotion, if it's low, we create low vibration, and then we think low vibration, we create negative reality, and we pass that on to another human being who's probably also at a low frequency and doing the same. Because if we're in a low vibrational world, which it is, not for everyone, but for most people, and I'm even guessing that even some people that are doing very well could still be at a low vibrational, because you can't, I'm not saying that's the case all the time, but it's consistent enough to keep the whole vibration down. I know that we have moments when we rise above the mundane drudgery of everyday life and feel happy, but it's not consistent, and it's not all the time, and it's not on an even keel, shall we say, and I think that is necessary to keep the vibration high. It's no good me just being happy just for a second, because that's not going to keep it at that level to where it really functions and keeps the world positive, shall we say, and therefore creating a positive reality. If you think negative, you will create negative. It can't be helped, and this is the problem with the world, because everything in the world is chaotic and not stable, and a little bit destructive, because every time you fight with someone, whether it be at a personal level or on a bigger scale, or do harm, that's destructive, and that creates negativity. It comes back to you and to me when we do it, and it infiltrates around the world as well, because we're all connected. So it's a problem, and it's hard to get on top of, because it's hard to be positive, as I've said before, the same as myself included, if the world around me is negative, and particularly if it comes particularly on me, it will, and this is part of the design of it, because we live in a negative realm. This is unfortunate, but I think we do. We don't live in a positive realm. We create, and we should be able to make it positive, but we can't, because we are unaware of it, number one. Number two, we are kept negative because of the world around us, so it becomes a catch-22. You can see that yourself, like it's one thing leads to the other. It goes round in a circle for that reason. So we never get out of that circle where we're in the negative frequency and the negative thinking and the negative emotions. So therefore it keeps going round and we pass it round to others unintentionally because we're unaware we're doing this, and we can't stop ourselves from doing it, because if we're in a negative realm, a negative environment, it's almost impossible to raise your frequency and your emotion to feel happy. How can you feel happy if there's tragedy around you, or if you're being hurt, or if you're being manipulated mentally to where you feel bad? And because that's what humans are, so it's very difficult then. It takes a very superior person to do that. And personally, I actually think that you almost have to get to the high vibration and feel good before you can become almost that superior person and able to do it. So once again, I think it's a catch-22 if you're following me. I'm probably not making very good sense here. I'm sorry if you're not getting it, because I know I'm not very good at kind of getting the idea across. And it's a difficult idea, because only in the sense that we don't experience it daily to even acknowledge that it's true. And that goes for myself too. I believe it to be true, but I don't experience it because I'm not like everyone else. I'm not able to get out of that cycle, that catch-22. If I could go to some paradise tomorrow, some paradise world, maybe I would be able to rise above it and raise my frequency and my emotion to where I could see it clearly. But I still believe it to be true, because when I look around and see how negative a lot of things are, I'm not saying everything, but overall, it produces negative energy. And I think the world has gone more like that, because also we, I think, are in an unnatural world for us. The technology and stuff is not really our domain. It is what we use now for the things that we should be using naturally. For communication, instead of the mind link that is natural, that we should have had naturally, that is not operating now. We're using the technology for that. And if you start, I think what happens, I could be wrong about this, but I think what happens is that if you start to use the technology to replace what you should have been using naturally, I think that also, the old saying, if you don't use something, you can lose it. And to some extent that could be true too. So you're replacing what you naturally have with something artificial. The artificial isn't as good, which if what I'm saying is correct, that naturally we had that connection, it would have to be better, because it would have been, as I said, instantaneous. It would have been like sending even more of a message, because it would probably encompass a lot more than just words, like you would be getting the direct thought. Now, I'm trying to be very careful about this, because this is technology comes into some of this now, this whole way of technology imitating what was already there naturally. That's how I see it. I think that's why I believe it, because I see technology trying to do what you would have thought in the past was impossible. But I believe that technology mimics and takes everything from human beings in every way. Everything that is in a computer, we give it. So there's just an example. all our knowledge, all our thoughts, everything that is good about us, everything we know we put into a computer, and then we go, wow, isn't that computer intelligent? No, it's not. It's us. We gave the computer the life. We give our stuff to the computer, to the internet, to the technology, and then the technology appears to be better than us. We're giving the technology that to make it better than us. That to me is nonsensical, but that's just me. Why would you give anything to something else to make it better than you? You know, that's like saying, oh, I'm just going to replace myself with something that could take over or be better than yourself. That to me doesn't seem very logical. Also, it's deceptive because the computer actually isn't smarter than the human because the human is giving it that. The computer is nothing without the human input. Just like this world we live in, which I'll just move this back here, sorry. If I can. Just open it all the time. Now that is a bit like this world that we live in. You know, we create this world with our thinking and with our hands too. The creation with the hands, I think, is a lot more the deception, so that we do not understand or acknowledge that we create with our thinking. And I think this is designed by the world around us to keep us in this world, in the sense that we buy into the physicality to such an extent that we don't think that there is anything else, and that we don't think that our thinking is that important. That's why we give it over to the technology, because we don't think that our thinking and our mind is the main thing, whereas it is. It's creating everything, but instead we think the technology is creating, and we think that the world around us, just at the physical level, is created only via the hands and via the physicality. It's all very much the physicality. You know, the what you can see, what you can touch, and you know, that sort of thing. But if the real reality is that it's created just by the mind and the thinking, then we are giving that over to the technology. The technology covers the globe. It's a technical matrix. It's a technical matrix that covers the earth, I think. It covers it and controls it, because if it covers it, it has to control it, because it is operating for everyone, you know, and even those who aren't using it, which would be not very many, would still probably be affected by the frequency of it, which is different to the frequency of the human. The human is natural, the computer is artificial. It is different. Now, I think it is different, and I think that it is not compatible. But that's something that everyone will have to think about for themselves and decide for themselves what they think about that, because it's not something that, you know, because you can't see the invisible, that's not something that that I can show you, and it's not something I can see myself with my eyes, but everything is frequency, vibration, and energy. That's the law of the universe, they tell me. So then the computer gives out a frequency. In fact, it operates, I think, it must operate by a frequency or a vibration because it goes invisibly through the air. And if everything is frequency, vibration, and energy, then it would have to be part of that. Now, I'm assuming that it is part of it, but I'm assuming that it is different to the human being. And I'm assuming that it is not compatible with the human being. Now, that, like I say, that probably could be proved scientifically if someone wanted to do it, but I don't know if they would do that or not, or whether they, or whether it has been done. I think that originally, they said that you shouldn't hold the mobiles next to your head for too long and stuff like this. So it's not like they don't tell you that, these things are not really 100% compatible with human beings. They actually do, but, no one can stop you from having it next to you all the time if you do that, or if you forget it, or if you think that it's okay. But, that's, that's up to the person. But I would say that if they said that a long time ago, and that it tells me that that it's not compatible with the human being, and don't forget that it's got more use now and more stronger, and it's everywhere. Whereas before it would have only been in some places, whereas now it totally controls and governs the whole globe. This is a fact. I think everyone would agree with that. I don't think that's really even up for debate. Now, I guess the only debate would be, is it a good or a bad thing? And can you live without it? If it was a bad thing, well, the answers to that, I suppose, would probably be no on most counts for most people, because the internet and the mobiles and all the computer stuff has become a necessity for people now, because they use them not just like for pleasure or just randomly. They use them, they need them. A lot of people need them in their particular work and that sort of thing. So then that means that they're not going to be able to say they can't use them unless they can find a substitute or do their work like they used to without them. And this is the problem, if that's the case. Now, that's the thing. So, yeah, how do you do what you need to do to survive in this computer-controlled matrix world? Without the computer or the mobile or whatever, the thing that you now use to actually navigate and get by in this world. This is the problem, I think, and I can sort of see that when I look around. So it becomes like, whether it is good or bad, we've made it a necessity for most of us. And this is you should never be too dependent on anything, and I know that myself. You become dependent, and then you're at the mercy of that person, that appliance, that computer, or whatever. This is the thing, and it may not be good for you. It may be a bad relationship. It may be a bad appliance. This is the problem. But it's kind of strange in the sense that I think that originally, and if all things were functioning in a natural way, these things would probably not be needed, because if human beings are really spiritual beings, not totally physical beings like we think of ourselves, and that's certainly how I've always thought of myself, I mean, I know I have a mind as well as a body, but I still tended to think mainly in terms of the physical. And even the mind, for a lot of people, is more, they think, more physical, even though even that is probably not, it's not really, it's physical in the sense that it's part of the body, but it operates, thinking is beyond the body really, I suppose, wouldn't it be, so even that. But the thing is that I don't want to get too confused, because I'll even confuse myself, because I'm not an academic or anything, but if we are spiritual beings in a physical body, but we think we're just mainly all physical, and our thought creates reality. See, that's something too that's part of the fact that we're spiritual, see, so we're actually kind of, we're creators of things, even, it doesn't matter, and, you don't have to, like, I've always thought, oh, I'm not a creator, I don't paint beautiful pictures and do anything artistic. I might like those things, but I don't do them. I'm not capable of doing them. But you see, that's because every human being is a creator, really. That's the thing. Being better with your hands, that's a different ability. You see, the most humans can create exactly the same as a great artist, but they just don't have they haven't developed the dexterity with their hands as much, that's all. Like the people who create the pictures and things, they don't think any better than you or I. They just have better dexterity with their hands to be able to put the thought onto the piece of paper, sort of thing, But I guess that I'm going to confuse you now, because I did say originally, like, human thought creates reality. So that means that human thought should be able to create the physical reality, So you shouldn't really have to use the hands to create the picture. You should be able to create it solely with your mind. Which even I'm sort of smiling at that, because I'm thinking, oh, I've always wanted to paint a picture. Could I have done that all along with my mind, Because I've always thought, yeah, you've got to have the dexterity and the talent with your hands to draw and to paint. That's something to think about, isn't it? I'm certainly going to think about it. But you see, the thing is, the problem is that something has happened there. One, we are unaware of that, because when we've never, you have to think of it this way, and this is how I'm trying to get my head around it too. Think of it this way, right? Look, when we're born as a baby, we're not told you can create anything with your mind. Your mind moves things. We think that's fairy tales, and that's, things we see in a fantasy film or a book or something. So you don't develop your thinking that way, you don't put your mind to that. And you certainly don't think that you are connected to the other person mentally. You think that you have to use speech for that. That's why you have to go to school to learn the speech and the writing, the communications, all these physical skills. I suppose it would, now I'm not knocking these things, far from it, but I'm saying that if the thought itself just creates reality and there is a direct communication between human beings mentally, all this artificial stuff, all this physical stuff is a blind, a false thing in a way, or at least at best a second-rate version of something that was, that is natural and authentic and, would just be so, what words could I use to describe it even? It would be like a very unbelievable in comparison with the tech and the physical world of doing everything in a slow, a very slow and clumsy way by comparison, I would think. But like I say, if you're not told that and we don't operate that way and we don't exercise those abilities and those skills and they haven't been developed, you're never going to know that, and you're never going to be able to just manifest things instantly and all this sort of stuff. It's just not going to happen. Everything, you're still born as a baby and have to learn to use things, Instead, we learn to use things at a very physical level. And now that we have gone into technology, I do not think that technology is the human, is a vehicle for humans to access one another or the, information or to expand their intelligence or their thinking in any way. I think it is the vehicle and the tool of the system itself, the internet, and who or what controls that, then controls the human beings, even though we use it voluntarily and, like I say, but we've become dependent on it too. But to me, it seems completely at odds with what naturally should be, if those basic points are the truth. Human beings are spiritual beings in a physical body. Their thought creates reality, and they're all connected. Obviously, there's a history there that needs for people to know the true history of what's gone on, but even I could not know that. In other words, I'm saying it to you, but I cannot know that. I can only know bits and pieces that I get from the internet even, which is kind of funny. But, like I say, there's good and bad to everything. See, I'm not saying that because even the internet now is used to put compilations of human history and knowledge there for people. And you have to, I think the problem is that you have to be able to try and discern what is the best and what is the truth, and it's very hard. It's hard for most people, I would say. It's been hard even for me, but I think that once you see it's a bit like once you see some cracks, or once you see that something is not right, or that you see that the world was not what you thought it was, and you know that for a fact, then you start to look for more facts. You start to build on that and say, well, whereas if you don't see that, or if it doesn't happen to you, because I think that most people, if they actually see it, then they will build on it, because humans are really quite intelligent, to say the least. Even like humans that you would think are not very educated and stuff like that. That does not matter at all. This is why it's necessary for this world around to keep all the humans in a kind of system and things, because even it doesn't matter how educated or not, just at that basic level they have the ability to see things. Once they see a bit of truth, or once they see, they will build on that. And because I know that myself, because I did not think any of this at all, but it was only because I saw some truths, and it wasn't like, I was seeking them or sought them. It's just, it's like if you see the reality around you as not what you thought it was, then you will say, well, if that's not what I thought it was, why? And maybe more is not what you think it is. So you see more and more, and then you start to realise, then you say, why? So once you start to say, why is this? Then if you get the answers, and particularly if you can relate it to yourself, then you know it to be true once it relates to yourself. Whereas while you're watching it, like I say, even for, the truth is there even on the computers, because it is still human input, and not all humans are in the dark. We're not all in the dark. Most of us are, I know I was, but there's still some that know more. They're not more intelligent, they just know more of what is actually true, rather than just information, because we have a lot of information these days, very much a lot of information, but just because we have a lot of information, a lot of data, doesn't mean that it's all the truth. Information and truth are often two different things, without me sounding fancy about it, but you could probably figure that out yourself, because you can get information and facts, but you can present them a certain way to where they're still giving a false picture. That happens all the time, I think, in the world. It's not, you don't even have to lie sometimes to still present someone with a false impression, shall we say. And it's the impression and what you perceive those facts to be, or that that will determine how you react to it, and I'm sure I'm confusing you and going round in circles myself. Like I said, we are kept in that, and this is true. See, even the way I'm talking, it becomes complicated for me, because you tend to think of the world as being simple, and that you think that you generally have a good idea of what makes it up and what is going on. And if we're spiritual beings, and our thought creates reality, and we're all connected, but we are controlled by a technology, which is a separate thing to us. Just think about that for a second. I know when I think about it, I'm like, well, that's completely at odds with what humans are, and no wonder they have, they have not got control then over their world, because they're operating in a different domain almost to what they actually are. And they're creating, but their creative thinking and just their thoughts alone are then being taken by the computer and can be used to then come back at the human on the computer again. I don't know whether I put that very well. I don't think I have. In other words, it'd be like, how should I explain it? It'd be like if I'm thinking certain things, like even if I'm thinking about what I like to eat, the computer can then hijack that and make a commercial that entices me to buy a particular food the next week, that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean by that? I don't know whether I used a good example, but I'm saying that we live in a total computer world, but we ourselves are not computers and should not be and aren't in our natural state, but we are living that way now. We're giving over our natural creative thinking to the computer, and then the computer controls us, you see. That's how it kind of works. And when I say controls us, I mean it dictates and governs how we think. We give it the thought. We give it the creative thinking. We're creating, but we're giving it over to the technology. Oh, jeez, I'm not explaining this well, I know. Also, the thing is that, and this is where it gets a bit bizarre, but I've seen it just the same, even though it is bizarre, because it's frequency, vibration and energy that makes up the universe, and because we are in a low frequency and vibration, this whole earth is, and you only have to look at the earth too to realise that, because we are meant to be in contact with the natural world, because we are biological, we are natural, and we are spiritual, and we create spiritually and naturally, okay? The technology is the opposite to that. It's not biological, it is artificial, it's like mechanical. And so we are like natural beings living in an artificial, intelligent, computer generated kind of matrix world. And we've let that happen. Whereas we should be living, I think, in an organic, natural world. And then we would be able to raise our frequency and therefore connect to the other human beings. Like, because I say we create reality, but we're really all connected, but we've lost that. Then if we raised our vibration in the natural world, with the nature, because we're in contact with all of that, because we're spiritual beings. We are not technical beings. We're not mechanical beings. That is technology. That is the world around us, the artificial intelligence matrix that we live in. But we're not meant to be living in that. We've let our natural world become an artificial intelligent matrix. I say matrix because it's a system, and it is a system. We all know we live in a system. Everything around us is systems. Everything around us is, the rat race is a system. The city is a system. You have your roads and you have your lights and you have all this stuff. This is all a system. Human beings are not meant to be in a system. They're not meant to be like that, because they're spiritual beings, they're natural beings, so they create reality, and they should be able, if they can raise their frequency really high, to be in sync with the natural world as well, you see the problem I'm saying, that we're totally out of touch with our true self and out of touch with our world. And so if we could raise the frequency, because everything is frequency, vibration and energy, then we would be in touch with our latent abilities. They would, I think, then be able to be used by us, and we would be able to communicate with the other humans, because we're meant to be all connected. And so we would have very little need of any technology, probably. Any. By that I mean I'm stretching it, I know, but I'm really assuming that if you're a spiritual being, that you should be able to move. This is probably very bizarre, I know it is for me, and it's also distressing but what I'm saying is you should be able to maneuver this world without technology. By that, and when I say move. I mean, we shouldn't need technology to even get around, is what I'm